You watching the soccer today, Jeff?
I'll be there. Absolutely. Appointment viewing now. And I've been there throughout the tournament. Soccer at an arm's length for me, but anything at or near the highest level in sports, it attracts me in a hurry. And so, what a day with the Euro semis and then into Copa as well. So, yes, a big, big day of soccer.
So before we get into the Vancouver Canucks here, then answer me the poll question, Jeff. The biggest Canadian sports upset of all time. Bianca over Serena to win the U.S. Open in 2019. Mike Weir beating Tiger at the President's Cup in Montreal 2007. Today over Argentina, if you're calling the upset, or feel free to go off the board here.
Yeah, I'd lean towards Bianca only because at the pro level of golf, I think on any given day, those guys are also good. You can catch a guy on a bad day. Not that Mike Weir caught Tiger on a bad day, but Mike Weir was a top 5 guy in the world at one point. Obviously, the Masters. I just think head-to-head, one round, a guy can get it going, red hot putter, whatever the case. So, yes, on paper, Mike Weir taking down Tiger looks like, massive David versus Goliath. But I think over the course of 2 weeks of a Grand Slam event, and I know we're talking about the final, and it culminates obviously with the final, but you got to get to the final first. And so for Bianca, she got on a roll and carried it through. So I would say at this point, individually, yeah, probably Bianca taking down Serena to win the U.S. Open, a great accomplishment, but this certainly stands. And I know that this isn't a final, but hey, we can ask the same question if they get through, set it up for, what's still to come. But yeah, I mean, come on. Canada, the last North American team standing in this tournament. Like, there's just so many arms and legs to this story. Let's go. Let's serve it up and see what happens.
In New York City against the greatest player of all time. So a delicious backdrop and stage here.
Let me ask you this, Jeff. We're never the underdogs in hockey. We went through a mock-up of the U.S. team for this Four Nations Cup. Now, we don't care about the Four Nations Cup, but it is a preview of the Olympics to come. Is there a world in which Canada will not be, I don't know about betting favorite. Let's take that word betting favorite out of it, but just your gut favorite. Are they going to be the gut favorite going into the next Olympic tournament?
Well, without knowing who's in goal for Canada and ultimately looking at the depth that the U.S. has, like, can we not somehow forge a passport or make a trade or something?
Exactly.
Like, Connor Hellebuck's the guy, right, for Team USA. Thatcher Demko's going to give him a pretty good run. Jake Ottinger, I think, is in the conversation. Jeremy Swayman is knocking on the door saying, hey, I'm available for rent for a short-form tournament. It's just an embarrassment of riches right now in goal for Team USA. And ultimately, the contenders when we're talking about Canada, Jordan Binnington and Stuart Skinner. I'm not sure that I can throw my full support behind Team Canada with Stuart Skinner. And I know he got them to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, but he's Stuart Skinner. Now let's see where he is next year and beyond. And maybe he continues to grow into that role. But short form, particularly a short form tournament, goaltending can absolutely be the difference maker. So, skater for skater, position by position, I still think, and I've seen mock-ups of the various lineups, and Team USA can roll out a hell of a lineup. There's no question. But I think Canada, if we're talking about 20 skaters, I think we can scrounge up 20 awfully good skaters as well. So I'll be fascinated to see betting lines and those types of things, because I do think the goaltending ultimately can be a huge difference maker, and they've got it, and right now we don't.
The top 3 skaters, the top 3 forwards for Canada are better than but Matt and I went through the depth of the 6 defensemen and the fourth line, like what the fourth line of the U.S. looks like. It's better. It's better than Canada. Like, it just is. But I mean, again, the spectacular helps. Crosby, McKinnon, McDavid can sometimes overcome all of that, but it's, my goodness, they are deep.
And to Jeff's point, Jeremy Swayman is from Alaska. Can't we just adopt him?
Yeah.
Can we find some
ancient treaty?
On
the loaner. He's a loaner for 2 weeks. We just take him on a loaner. That's, yeah.
Seems reasonable to me.
Jeff, yesterday we were talking about our favorite Canucks free agent signing outside of Jake DeBrusk. Of the other 4 guys, which one is your favorite and why?
So, as I sit here now in early July, Probably Danton Heinen. Just I like his speed. I like his versatility. I like the fact that he's been linked to the Canucks on so many occasions that he finally was able to make it happen and come back home. And we'll see how it's. We know that the homegrown thing doesn't always work out, but I think that there is a decent player there. And I like the fact that all these guys have come from the Boston system where they've been well coached. And I think that they're going to step into a structured system here, and it's going to translate. There's going to be some differences, obviously. There are across the National Hockey League, but I think Danton Heinen is a guy who's had to scratch and claw for every contract that he gets. And even though he's put up some decent numbers in years gone by, he hasn't really been able to get the security that he got. And not that 2 years is a ton of security, but I think that he can lay down some roots back home here and feel like he's going to be a Canuck for the next couple of seasons at the very least. And yet it's not the long-term contract that maybe he falls into that trap of being too comfortable. So look, if we think that Jake DeBrusk is, I don't think Jake DeBrusk is a straight swap for Ilya Mikheyev, even though he may end up stepping into Ilya Mikheyev's spot. I think Dan Heinen is more in that sort of role. And after what we saw out of Mikheyev over the second half of the season and in the playoffs, certainly hope that Danton Heinen can give the Canucks everything that they got from Ilya Mikheyev down the stretch and into the postseason.
The depth of this team overall, do you feel like it has been addressed? Is that, like, people will debate whether or not this team is better than it was at the start of last year, at the end of last year, what have you. But is it unequivocal that at least the depth on the forward lines is better?
I think so, certainly on paper. Now, we have to remember that at the end of the playoffs, that was a roster that included Elias Lindholm, who had a really nice playoff run. Didn't have a great regular season, but he wasn't brought in for the regular season. He was brought in to bolster the ranks for the playoffs, and he did that. And so a right shot center, valuable commodity, they take a bit of a hit there. But I'm encouraged by Jake DeBrusk. I want to see how this works out, and I trust that it is going to work out. I don't think he's going to have 7 30-goal seasons as a member of the Canucks. There'll be some dips along the way. But I think the potential is there for him to be a 30-plus goal scorer. And at $5.5 million, I think that's a reasonable freight. So when I look at the depth, obviously a guy like Nils Höglander, 24 goals last year on this absolute heated shooting percentage. I'm not anticipating that that's a jumping on point for Höglander and that we expect him to be a 25-goal guy for the next couple of seasons. I think that, like Kuzmenko, I think just the numbers suggest that there could and probably will be some regression there. Is Brock Besser a 40-goal scorer now because he got there once? That seems like a bit of an ask for me. But I also think he now knows what it feels like and looks like to be a 40-goal guy. And so the baseline for me starting the season for Brock Besser is 30. I think there's no reason that playing with JT Miller, showing that he was able to have success in the power play, I certainly I don't want to see a world in which Brock Besser takes a step back below 30 goals after getting to 40 this time around. So I think that Besser and Höglander may be a step back, but we also know that there's so much more for Elias Paterson to give compared to the way that he finished his season. And then you plug in DeBrusk and you get Heinen. And I answered the poll question as Heinen, but I'm high on Kiefer Sherwood as well. Like, I really was drawn to him in the playoffs. Like, he was just an absolute thorn in the side every shift, didn't waste a shift in the playoffs. And I sort of look at this comparison where Sam Lafferty got to the point that he was a healthy scratch in the playoffs. Kiefer Sherwood should be able to give you everything you got out of Sam Lafferty and more. And I think have a little bit more of that sandpaper, that edge. You know, the Lafferty looked the part and just left you wanting on so many nights. And I think Kiefer Sherwood has come to a point now at 29 where he understands what got him to this level and what's going to keep him at this level. And I think he's going to be a Rick Tocchet favorite. I think Rick Tocchet is really going to like having a player like Kiefer Sherwood in his lineup.
And Jeff, Alvin talked about him as potentially a second power play unit guy in the bumper spot because of his good shot. Power play wise, in terms of personnel and all the pieces fitting together here after free agency, have you sketched it out? Do you think they're in good standing there?
Honestly, I leave that till August. That sounds like an August project for me, Matt. I really haven't given it a whole lot of thought. I would assume that DeBrusk gets the first opportunity on power play one, a left shot guy. I know that he hasn't played the bumper a ton, but really when you think since Bo left, Kuzmenko was the first guy through. Garland got some looks. Lindholm, all righties. They really haven't found a goal scorer as a left shot guy, and were reluctant to try Höglander or Dakota Joshua. Got to the point that Nikita Zadorov was a net front presence there when they were pulling the goaltender late in games. Well, he's not here, so he's no longer an option. But I would assume that DeBrusk is going to get a look on power play 1. And then we're sort of back where they were as a team last year, where it's going to be a collection on power play 2 and kind of throwing some stuff against the wall, I think, and hoping it sticks. I would assume that Philip Hronek would be the defenseman out there, and then you're Connor Garland and Dakota Joshua, I have to imagine, is going to take on more of a role. That's something that I would like to see, is plant him in front of the net. We know that he's certainly got the size and he's got the hands there. Why wouldn't you? To the point that if DeBrusk doesn't work on power play 1 or goes cold at some point, can Dakota Joshua continue to grow his game where maybe he gets a look with the big boys with the man advantage? So beyond that, is it Garland, Höglander, Joshua, and Heinen as your forwards on the second power play unit? Hronek, again, perfect world. Your power play, the first unit goes out, does the damage, scores, and you don't ever have to worry about power play 2. And we sort of saw that early on last season, where power play 2 was just a collection of guys and never really got on any sort of roll. You'd love to have a little bit of balance, but I do think that's going to be a work in progress.
We've talked about the Canucks maybe getting a puck-moving defenseman between now and opening night. Truth of the matter is, there's only so much negotiation you need to have with a $1 million puck-moving defenseman. Adam Boqvist signs with Florida. He was out there. That's where he signs. Barry's out there. I mean, what kind of negotiation? Yeah, like all these guys. Like, I know. I look at the calendar and I realize, okay, it is only July 9th. But again, I also look at the, what does the negotiation look like with those guys? It's pretty quick. It's a yes or a no. What do you think? Does this tell you that they have other plans to address that? Whether it means a trade or maybe they just wait until the series or the season has begun to address this issue?
Yeah, look, I was willing to live in a world where they took a flyer on a guy like Boqvist and to see him get a two-way deal, that's basically a throwaway. There's no downside there for Florida. So I'm surprised that it took as long as it did for him to get that contract, but he's off the board for now. My sense is, and I don't know this, but my hunch is that they are going to sort of step away other than Artur Silovs, and there's no real hurry there unless they sense that somebody's going to pounce and try to poach. Even then, there's enough wriggle room that I think they would match any sort of offer sheet. And we know that we talk about offer sheets all day and rarely do they happen. So I'm not too worried about an offer sheet for Artur Silovs, but really beyond that, there isn't a whole lot left on their to-do list here in the summer months. And my hunch is that they're going to be patient and play it out and see what the market bears. And again, you get closer to training camp where some teams are going to have to shed some salary and maybe a player shakes free. When you set your rosters ahead of opening night, usually there's a player or two of interest that is available on waivers. And I think that's the sort of level of player that we're looking at for the Vancouver Canucks. And then beyond that, if they want to start the season with the defensemen that they've got, and they do have 8 guys, including Noah Juulsen and Mark Friedman, it's not like they can't ice an NHL lineup. The Vinny Desharnais thing is interesting to me, and certainly the way that they talk him up, that they think there's a whole lot more there. We'll see. But look, Adam Foote and Rick Tocchet in this system brought out the best in Tyler Myers, and to the eye, Vincent Desharnais is a lot. He's certainly not as experienced as Tyler Myers. We know that. And they love the fact that he's only played 114 games in the National Hockey League. Like, they think that he is this a ball of clay that they're going to be able to mold and see what they can squeeze out of him. So, I won't be shocked if they arrive at training camp with the assembled cast that they've got on defense and then take it from there if they feel that they need to make some moves or some upgrades.
What about at wing, Jeff? And I ask that because Martin H.S. is one of 14 guys who has filed for arbitration. So the clock is ticking there. No one has yet met Carolina's price. Maybe that price comes down. Do you think they should? Do you think they will take a run at H.S. on the trade market?
I don't. I just can't figure out how the Canucks would consummate a deal like that. I just don't think they've got the trade capital. And then beyond that, you get the player. He wants a significant raise, and he's going to get one. And so to me, it's sort of a double whammy of the acquisition cost with the chips that the Canucks have to play, and being out at prospects camp last week, it's driven home that there really isn't an awful lot in the cabinet. They can try to put a spin on it, and hopefully some of these guys, and obviously the ones that were just drafted, it's way too soon to render any sort of verdict, and I'll give them every opportunity. But just in terms of having players that you're ready to part with, they spent draft capital on Zadorov, obviously threw in a bunch to get Lindholm out of Calgary. Those guys have walked, so those deals are done, and they have nothing to show for them. Negus is a nice player, there's no question. But it's going to come at a cost, and then he's going to want big money over long term. And I don't think that they're in a position to go down that road. So my sense there is that that's a non-starter for the Vancouver Canucks. But hey, Patrick Allvin loves to operate in the cone of silence. And, would I be blown away if the Canucks somehow pulled off that kind of deal? I'd be awfully surprised, but never say never with this management group.
Lastly, Jeff, from me, just because I saw his name on the list of remaining free agents, and we know he can forecheck. How does 36-year-old Cal Clutterbuck sound, huh? Wow. As a guy who's hard on the forecheck and demolishing everything in sight with his physicality.
I think they're okay with Cal Clutterbuck. Jeff?
Yeah, that's not a name that I think they need to add to the collection at this point. And it'd be interesting to see where ultimately he falls if he finds a hockey home at that stage of his career. We do know that he has racked up hits, maybe more than actually he's doled out over the years. But hey, who's to quibble, right? Accounting is different in all those rinks. But the hit total sometimes seemed artificially high with that player.
Played all 82, though, last year. One of the few remaining free agents who did play all 82.
Maybe a PTO. Maybe.
Yeah. Does that mean... I just thought the Islanders were keeping their entire team together. I thought
that's what Lou does now. This team isn't good enough, but we're going to keep it intact, and we're going to hope for better next year.
How's that working for him?
Yeah.
I think I think that whole project now is about how he gets his son the job. Great stuff, Jeff. We'll catch up next week.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.